If you still feel unsatisfied despite how hard you work or how many smart career moves you've made, keep watching because I've been exactly where you are. I spent 20 years doing everything right, taking promotions, building my reputation, and following logical next steps. But I often felt I wasn't in the right place. I felt like my ambition was quietly eroding, and I wasn't as fulfilled as I wanted to be. I didn't understand why I felt this way when I was making progress and doing everything right, until I finally figured out and discovered what I really wanted. And this happened only when I stopped making these 5 smart career moves that actually derailed my ambitions and might be derailing yours too. So in this video, I'll be sharing with you these 5 smart career moves that were keeping me stuck and what to do instead so that you can achieve what you want. And make sure to watch the entire video so that you get all the steps. Let's get into it. The first lesson I learned was just because a move is logical and makes sense on paper doesn't mean that it actually makes sense for you. So throughout my time at KPMG, I consistently took the next logical step: manager to senior manager to director, director to partner. And each promotion felt like validation that I was on the right track. I was conditioned to believe that if you're good at something and the opportunity presents itself, then you take it. And that's what smart people do, right? But what I didn't realize until much later was that I was making decisions based on external expectations rather than internal alignment. I was so focused on what I should do that I never really asked for long enough what I actually wanted to do. When you consistently take the next logical step without considering what you really want, you end up building someone else's version of success, not your own. And this is exactly what I see with people I work with now. They've been stuck for so long because they've been making logical moves, but they've lost touch with what actually energizes them. And the common mistake is thinking that success means taking every opportunity that comes your way. But the smartest career move you can make is learning to say no to opportunities that don't align with who you're becoming. Which leads me on to my second lesson. Money isn't the best compass for life decisions. Throughout my corporate career, I consistently made decisions based on pay. Higher pay was the smart choice. I thought financial optimization was the same thing as career optimization. And that seemed completely rational. After all, I had financial responsibilities like everybody else. More money meant more security, more options, and maybe more freedom. But what I discovered was that when you make money the primary driver of your career decisions, you end up trapped by what are called golden handcuffs. The more you earn, the more you spend, and the more afraid you become of taking any financial risk. I was financially successful, but professionally, I was becoming less and less fulfilled. And I realized that I built a lifestyle that required me to stay in a role that was no longer energizing me. And this is the trap that most senior professionals find themselves in. They've optimized for salary increases without considering whether the roles actually suit their strengths, values, and ambitions. The hidden cost of always following the money is that you end up making decisions from a place of fear rather than a place of possibility. So you start asking, can I afford to leave? Instead of, can I afford to stay? And what you need to understand is that some of the most fulfilling roles may require some financial trade-offs in the short term. The third thing I learned was that padding out your CV with impressive projects is often just a sophisticated form of procrastination. When I felt stuck in my career, my instinct wasn't to slow down and reflect. It was actually to take on even more. Extra projects, firm initiatives, volunteering for committees, those sorts of things. I thought that the reason I felt unfulfilled was because I needed more breadth, more experiences, more proof that I was still progressing. And on the surface, it felt like the smart move because in professional services, visibility really matters. The more lines on your CV, the more valuable you appear. But what I eventually realized was that I wasn't collecting experiences to grow. I was collecting them to avoid making the harder decisions about what I actually wanted to do with my career. I was keeping busy instead of getting clear. Projects and, extracurricular activities can give you exposure, but what they can't give you is clarity. They can't tell you what energizes you or what type of work you want to build your future around. They're external solutions to internal questions. And I see this all the time with professionals that I coach. They think the reason they feel stuck is because they need one more big project under their belt, when actually the missing piece is about clarity and confidence about what they really want next. So CV building becomes a form of hiding, this form of procrastination. You convince yourself that you're making progress, when in reality, you're just avoiding the deeper work of figuring out what you want and having the courage to go after it. What you need instead of more bullet points on your CV is more self-awareness, understanding your natural strengths, what energizes you, what kind of environments you thrive in, and what you want your work to actually achieve in your life. The fourth thing I learned was that playing it safe is actually the riskiest strategy of all. As I got deeper into my corporate career, I found myself thinking, this is a good career, I'll just do this until I retire. And that seemed like the rational approach. I built expertise, I was well compensated, I had security. Why risk all of that for something uncertain? But then I thought about how soul-crushing it would be to spend 10, 15 years doing work that no longer excited me. And I realized that I'd potentially be wasting the peak of my professional capabilities. So the real risk wasn't financial failure. The real risk was reaching retirement and regretting that I'd settled for good enough. This is the most dangerous trap because it feels so responsible. You convince yourself you're being practical when actually you're acting from a state of fear. The cost of playing it safe isn't just professional stagnation, but it gradually erodes your confidence, your ambition, and your belief in your own capabilities. So what you need to understand is that at your stage of your career, playing it safe is likely the riskiest move you can make. You've got experience, you've got credibility, and hopefully a bit of a financial cushion. And if you don't take bold moves now, then when are you going to do that? Which leads me to my final lesson. Waiting for perfect conditions is just fear dressed up as strategy. For years, I told myself I would consider a change when the timing was right, when I had enough saved, when the market was more stable, when I was a bit older, when the economy was better. I had a mental list of conditions that needed to be met before I could make a bold move. But what I realized during my last couple of years in my old career was that I wasn't actually waiting for perfect conditions. I was waiting for some sort of guarantee of success in what I was going to do next. And guarantees just don't exist in those sorts of career transitions. And the cost of waiting wasn't just missed opportunities, it was the slow erosion of my confidence and ambition. And this is what I call plausible sabotage, where we come up with perfectly plausible reasons not to make a change, even though we know that that change is what we need. It's analysis paralysis disguised as strategic thinking. And high achievers are particularly susceptible to this because we're used to having all the information before we make decisions. But when it comes to major career moves, waiting for perfect conditions is actually the riskiest strategy of all, because those perfect conditions will never exist. And while you're waiting, opportunities will pass you by. So what you need to do instead is focus on the next right step, not the perfect step. So those are the 5 smart moves that have kept me trapped. But acknowledging them alone wasn't enough to make the change. Because let's be honest, knowing what's wrong with your career is easier than actually doing something about it. I had financial responsibilities, a reputation to consider, and honestly, no guarantee that starting my own business would work. But these are just the realities of making major career changes in your 40s. And that's why I didn't just quit overnight. I spent months getting clear on what I actually wanted to build, understanding my strengths and values, and creating a transition plan that managed the practical realities of my situation. And it was only when I had absolute clarity about what I was moving toward, not just what I was moving away from, that I was comfortable taking that risk. What I didn't know as I was planning my exit was that I'd end up building something even more fulfilling than I'd imagined. Not just a business success, but the daily experience of doing work that aligns with who I've become. I just did what felt authentic to my strengths and my values, and I followed my energy rather than any external expectations. And I became laser focused on helping other professionals make their own transitions, partly because it had been so impactful for me. But at the end of the day, this is my journey. These are the moves that I made and the lessons that I learned getting there. It may not be the right path for everyone, but hopefully by sharing these 5 traps that keep smart professionals stuck, it will give you the clarity and courage to stop making decisions based on what you think you should do. Maybe your situation is completely different and you thrive in corporate life, or you might be ready to leap into something entirely new. Whatever it is, just make sure that whatever move you make next is yours, driven by getting clarity and confidence in what truly energizes you, not by external expectations or what looks smart on paper. And if you want some help with that, take a look at the link below.